If you wish to ask a question during this meeting, please indicate to the Vice Chairman, Councillor Sarah Trotter. This meeting will be recorded and the proceedings retained in accordance with the Council's democratic item on the agenda is comments from members of the public. Amy, have we any comments from you?
Thank you, Chairman. We haven't received any comments from members of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, apologies for absence from replacement members. Before I go to Amy, I mentioned last month, long-serving member Councillor Mike Exton sadly passed away. Mike served on this council since 1998 and was also a county councillor. Can I please ask you all to stand in silence for a minute in memory of Mike? Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. Amy, have we any apologies for absence? I know that Councillor Rose Cambridge-Brown is not here yet.
We haven't received any apologies for absence, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on to the declarations of interest. Are there any members who have a declaration of interest to declare? You may also declare them during the meeting. Any members? No, thank you. Item 4, action notes from the meeting held on the 1st of July. For accuracy only, I shall go through them page by page. So page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8. Yes, Councillor Knowles.
On page 6, 5, 6. Item rate, as of this specific governmental scheme. I'm concerned on 2 counts, Chair. First of all, being very pedantic, the English in it is not appropriate. Under the decisions on number 7 on the previous page, the committee considered and were encouraged the content of the report. Should be that the content of the report in relation to whatever. And on page 7, there are several more items. Under action 2 recommendations, that the committee supported to the adoption of the renamed, it should be that the committee supported the adoption of the rename. The 2 is there unnecessary. Number 2, recommended that the scheme be fully subsidised, should be subsidised, but only for those who fill the specific criterion. The A there is surplus to requirements. I hope I'm not being too pedantic, but I rather think they should be proofread before they're presented to us. And secondly, on action on the 8, Housing Services Assisted Garden and Maintenance Scheme, much of our conversation was based on the costs, which were not costs but were charges. But that is not referred to in the report. It says that an action is a breakdown of costs to garden maintenance scheme provided to members, but there was substantial discussion about the actual costs or charges that were made, which started off at 76,000 for 1 year and became 196,000 for the other one. Yet that discussion or that mention is not mentioned in the minutes at all. They've been taken out of the minutes. I can only assume because they're not very helpful for people who were producing.
Councillor Knowles, thank you very much indeed for those comments. I'll make sure that the minutes are updated with your comments.
Thanks so much indeed.
Would I get to page 9? So do I have a proposer with the amendments that they are true record of the minutes are held on the 1st of July? proposed by Councillor Sarah Trotter, seconder, Councillor Henry Westropp. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you very much indeed. We move on now to the item 5 updates from the previous meeting. Councillor Lowell, you'll note in there that there will be an update on the housing garden scheme at a later stage.
Can I
Yes,
comment on that, please?
Yeah.
I actually think this is an insult to you as chair, to this committee, and to the scrutiny system in particular, in general. We've had a recent visit from somebody to look at scrutiny, and they wanted to know what we felt was wrong with the scrutiny. Well, this is one major thing that's wrong. It's not considered important enough to give a simple answer to a simple question 3 months after the date. And I repeated the question at a council meeting 2 or 3 weeks after our meeting, and I was told I would get an answer. The answer to this question is somewhere in the system, because the notes must have been done. The numbers must be there. Somewhere in the system, there must be a record of the hourly charge to the garden scheme, how many gardens are being done, therefore what is the charge per garden, and what is the cost of the overheads, therefore, that are being applied by SK Environment to this. That's all it's looking for. Now, that doesn't take 3 months to find out, and it certainly doesn't take 6 months to find out. Either one of the 3 things happened. There was no proper exercise done in the first place, and so an exercise has to be done in the future to justify these numbers, which I don't think is true. I think there was some sort of exercise done. I'm assured there was. Secondly, the numbers are hard to justify, so they need a lot of work to try and justify the numbers. Or thirdly, there's just a lack of consideration for the scrutiny committee and you as chair, Madam Chair, because a simple question, which should take a couple of hours to get the answers to, that we've not got after 3 months, and we ain't going to get for another 3 months. So it's January from July to answer a simple question. I think that is an insult to you, sir.
Councillor Lowell, you make a very valid point there. I'm going to go to Councillor Robert Reid to give us an explanation. Councillor Reid.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. First and foremost, I apologise for the fact that the full findings have not yet been disclosed and forwarded. The reasons that I ask you to understand is that the housing service has been under particular pressures that have been ongoing, but they have been accentuated by the fact that Chris Stratford ended on the 3rd week in July. And indeed, we have had a head of housing interim had to come in, and various other staffing difficulties. Now, that has happened over August and indeed September. And the gentleman to my left, the director, has been doing many things that of priority, and sadly this hasn't made to the top of the list at the minute. We will give an assurance that you will have an answer and an explanation as to the report that was put forward on the assisted garden scheme by the end of October. I can only again apologise, but we have been under pressures. What I am able to share is very, very good news indeed, is that we have an exceedingly competent assistant director joining us on the 1st of November, and we have an equally excellent new head of housing that's going to start with us on the 29th of November. And we have several other appointments that are also following suit. And by the turn of this year, we shall have an excellent team that will be bedded in, because they've been doing some preliminary work before they even start. And we will be up to speed, not only just with this answer, Chairman, but with many others. including the housing revenue accounts budget, which probably, owing to the stock condition survey, we shall not be presenting at the same time as the general budget for your information, but it will follow on probably 4 or 5 weeks afterwards. What we are intending to do is to make sure that it is the revision is solid, it's mandatory, and it's fit for purpose for all of our housing tenants. And this morning, just reverting back to the assisted garden scheme, there is also some consideration, of complement where the collection of grass and the grounds maintenance is concerned, but not so that of the raised flower beds, which have been neglected and I thought were in the revised contract. So we should be looking into that at all. So I'm sorry that the answer hasn't come. I just simply won't give an update to something that's not substantiable, and owing to the housing regulator and everything else, I apologise most sincerely to Councillor Knowles, but he will have an answer, as all of you will, and it doesn't need us to take to the next scrutiny meeting to give it, but I have been particularly short on the ground for several weeks, and I ask for that to be considered. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Reid, I'm sure we all recognise how hard your department has been working, but I do really agree with Councillor Knowles that if we need information, we should be given it as soon as possible. Councillor Knowles, are you happy with that reply from Councillor Reid?
I welcome the fact that we're going to get the information before January. I welcome that, and thank you, Robert. By the way, I did pre-advise Robert, who's a friend of mine at Bourne, that I would be bringing this up, so it's not dropping something, into his lap without warning. I'm not happy that we have to appoint a director and an assistant director and an interim director and a housing, this, that, the other, to get 3 pieces of paper with numbers on that should have been calculated before it was presented to us first. It was a simple question and the simple answers, and I can't understand. And I am told from another source that this work was done. Now, they'll not mention the name. I was told who did it. So give me half an hour with that report from that particular person. I'll do it for him. I'll do it for, it's half an hour of a job, not 3 months of a job. But I do welcome that now we're going to get it before the end of October. And thank you, Robert. Now I do understand you have problems, and thank you for apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. I think in future, if the committee asks a particular question, we ought to give it a timeline where we need an answer by, that we all agree on, if it's practical to get that answer back to you. Are you happy with that? So, for example, if you ask me a question and you need it within 2 weeks, we'll try to liaise with the officer to get that answer back to you within those 2 weeks. Councillor Smith, are you here as an observer or a replacement member? All right. Unfortunately, you need to notify in advance. So do you have a question that you used to ask? Okay, thank you. Back to the action sheet on page 11. Are there any further comments on that report? No. I'll move on then to agenda item 6, which is the compliance update. I think Carol Drury will be doing it. No, not you, Carol. The head shaking. Which officer? And this is something I've actually spoken to Amanda today. We do not know which officers are attending these meetings. So could you in advance notify Amy which officers are going to attend the meeting so we know who to expect? So who will be presenting this particular report?
If I may, Chair, my director is going to introduce the compliance update. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is, of course, a regular update that comes to committee in terms of the ongoing compliance issues within the housing service. I won't dwell on the history, but clearly there's a direction of travel in terms of us being served a notice of non-compliance by the regulator and the work and activities that have come from that. In terms of the report itself, that's structured in the way the committee has previously requested. So in terms of both audit review, that's covered at section 1.9 of the report. There is a detailed audit for housing service that's just concluded, and the draft report is awaited and will go through the usual sort of governance arrangements. Section 1.10 covers the regular meetings with the regulator. The last meeting was on the 22nd of earlier in September there, and those meetings are attended by the council's chief executive, by me, and we meet with 2 officers from the regulator. We have appended, in terms of feedback from committee last time, to this report, 2 of the papers that go to the regulator. The first covers some specific core areas of compliance in relation to some of the performance indicators. And the second appendix is the implementation plan. We also give updates in terms of, for example, the Earlsfield Estate project and also sheltered housing improvements. There is a detailed sort of breakdown within the body of the report in terms of that appendix 1, which is the performance sort of indicators. I'd also highlight for committee section 1.13 of the report, where the South Kesteven District Council has been included in the regulator's customer regulation review for the last financial year, and there's an extract included in the report. And of course, if committee members would like to see the full report, I'd be happy to share that. The other standard sort of heading in terms of update is section 1.15 in terms of the regular sort of strategic meetings chaired by Councillor Reid as portfolio holder, attended by the leader of the council, the chief executive and myself. Those meetings are held fortnightly with a constantly updated action plan and also managing specific responses in terms of performance as that flexes. The other headline is, of course, the regular reports to committees and cabinet, and the forward plan for cabinet reflects that. And of course, this report itself that comes regularly to overview and scrutiny. That's a brief summary of the report, Chairman. Of course, happy for any questions and interested in the discussion and views of committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. I do note and comment on the fact that the direction of travel seems to be going the right way. I'm really pleased with that. I've got 2 questions. One, 1.113, the fire risk assessment, that's been completed. How long did that take, and was there any surprises that you found on the way?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the fire risk assessments were rolled out in the earlier part of this year, and we've focused in on the blocks, if you like, the blocks of flats that we have that are higher risk, and we're really pleased to be able to report 100% completion there. That was rolled out over around a 12-week period, if I recall correctly. I guess there's a mix of findings in terms of the fire risk assessments. There were some issues that weren't a surprise, I guess, in terms of some of the ways in which communal areas are used by tenants in terms of rubbish or stuff left in those communal areas, and that's an immediate action for us to remove that. There are some longer term pieces of work that are still classed as higher risk, which would be things around fire doors and fire door replacement. Really pleased to be able to notify committee that members of the trades team, the council's own in-house workforce, have received training on fire door and fire door replacement. So we'll be able to do a large proportion of that work in-house. I guess that overall there were no surprises, no big surprises. One of the things that we're having to balance that I'd like to highlight for committee is the fact that we did those fire risk assessments in one block relatively quickly. So we've got a lot of actions that have come out, with similar sort of deadlines. All that is reported to the regulator in terms of the different categories of risks. We're on track for all the higher risks to be eliminated by the end of this year, by the end of December, and the regulator is satisfied with our approach.
Thank you very much, Steve. You've answered all my questions now. I'm going to open up to members of the committee for questions. My first member is the Vice Chairman, Councillor Sarah Trotter.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, a question for you, Andrew. Just referring to page 14 of the report, 1.8, it says, referring to the rant and rave IT new platform. Are we on target still for the end of October? Because obviously we're going in towards the winter months, and I feel that we need to know any problems sooner rather than later, until we hit the bad weather, and then we're sort of playing catch up. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chairman. Yes, we are on track with the end of October. That we did see some slippage over the summer with Rant and Rave. Basically, it's a big IT project and you'll seem to stumble across some hurdles, but we are on track for the end of October. I absolutely agree with the point in terms of listening to tenants and getting tenant feedback. So important, and it's entirely consistent, of course, with the white paper, the Charter for Social Housing Tenants that's been published a few months ago. And that's really about listening to tenants and, taking their views into account. It will still be, even with the launch of the end of October, we'll still be the first local authority to use that Rant and Rave software. It's very common with housing associations, but we will be the first local authority to use a product like that, which I think is really good for us. And of course, we're including details about it in the next edition of Skyline to encourage tenants to use it and give us their feedback. So important for helping us shape our services.
Thank you, Andrew. Just a quick one on top of that. As ward councillors, obviously, very often we get the rant and the rave directly. We should be encouraging the residents to go directly to yourselves as opposed to coming through ourselves, or you have happy if they're a bit reluctant to report themselves, if it's something we can still pass on.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'd encourage tenants to use Rant and Rave and to give us that feedback directly. Of course, there's a really important role for ward councillors. And again, that sort of listening approach, if a tenant feels they need an advocate or someone to support with that, then of course, any well, they call them communication channels, don't they now? So any channel is fine. But for us to get that big data that we can then analyse, Rant and Rave is definitely going to be a really important channel for us.
Thank you. Councillor Philip Knowles.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I like that the use of big terms. It's a big listen, and we've had the big data, and we've had the big clean, and it's much more important that we do things rather than give everything under these sexy titles, which seems to be the way these days. But having said that, I want to refer to on page 14, 1.7. Everybody got to it, and it's about the stock condition survey. And I'm delighted that we seem to be making some progress in getting a stock condition survey done. But it suggests that there's no stock condition survey been done since 2009. Is that correct? Yeah. Well, what happened if it's every 5 years to 2014 and 2019? And is it just not another example of something where over a number of years, something that is important has been missed? Once again, it's in housing. I'm not blaming the current structure in any way. I know they're working very, very hard to try and get things right. But again, it's something like we've had in the past where things have not been done that should be done. And we're now having to catch up 12 years. Do I understand from the last sentence, which isn't very clear, that the whole of the stock review will be ready later this year? October 2021, or just 20% of it?
Councillor Reid.
Me.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I just share with every other councillor why the inadequacies that have happened with the lack of any stock condition survey. We managed, and thanks to other councillors' support, to actually get the budget approved last December. And we are working on it. The findings, the preliminary findings, we will have by the end of October. We need to use those findings and and subsequent challenges that they bring to build those into next year's budgets. And that's one of the main reasons why we should be late with the housing revenue accounts budget. It doesn't answer what happened in the past. I remain as disappointed as everybody else, but we are where we are. We're very open, we're very transparent. We do talk about it now, and more than just talk about it, you are now monitoring our actions in the way forward that we are making. That's the first part of it. The second part of it, sorry, I can't quite remember.
Councillor Knowles, do you want to repeat the second part?
The second part is the review of all the stock or just part of the stock?
The review is of all the stock. What we are being a little bit impatient about is that when we've got at least 50% of the report, we are going to take the early findings and start and work on those till we've got the whole of the report. But it will be 100% of the stock that we have. And then we have the challenge of sorting out, first of all, the short-term budget, which we need to present for this coming year, 22-23. And then we need to be working on the medium term, and then we need to be looking at the long term, and we need to be looking at the complete structure. Chairman, I am appalled that on one particular row of houses that I know of, they have condensation, they have poor ventilation, but above all, they are living in some of our houses that have no felt underneath the lats and the tiles on their roofs. We have some very serious priorities to make and to sort out, but we need to do it in fairness and be disparatory to the whole of the district. And I've got a cracking team that are coming together that I've got every confidence we are going to show you meeting on meeting the updates and where we've got to do, what we're doing. And I'm sure that the members of this committee will be giving us good pointers, perhaps even in helping us to prioritise the way that we actually do it. By no means are we taking the approach that Andrew and I just know best, because we don't. So we're very grateful for the committee. We are very grateful for the way that things are moving on, albeit we have the regulator to contend with as well. We're good placed with that at the moment, and that doesn't mean we're going to slip behind, but it doesn't mean that we need to be getting on with all of these other things. And we shall have a professional team that are going to be able to help us deliver it. And I would like to say personally that I feel 100% more comfortable sat here today than I did 1 year ago. Thank you.
Thank you. That sounds quite shocking, really, that we've got tenants living in properties without adequate insulation, particularly with the proposed rise in gas prices next year. Could I ask that you and your team make that a priority? Councillor Knowles, do you want to come back at all?
Briefly, Chair, if I might. First of all, I know that Robert working very, very hard. I know that, and I know him as a person working very hard, and it's in difficult circumstances. I'd be intrigued to know, and I really don't want an answer now, this is sort of a rhetorical question, intrigued to know how the budget for 21-22 was done, where they didn't know the condition of the housing stock. So you do a budget to put the housing stock in good, or keep it in good nick, supposedly, And you did a budget last year, or somebody did a budget last year, without ever knowing the housing stock and what it was. It seems a remarkable performance, whoever come up with that number. It was another number that was, seems good number, and we get it through. The other thing is how it's escaped scrutiny. I understand before the current system came, there was another system of scrutiny before my time here, which you may be aware of. But how did scrutiny miss so much between 1929 and 2021 or 2019 or whatever, without noticing that the housing stock in particular and the housing control in particular was less than satisfactory? It beyond belief that our scrutiny system during that time should have failed so badly. It's not a knock in what there is now, of course. I know we're trying very hard, but it's beyond belief that the scrutiny system should miss so much during that time. Thanks.
I can assure you, Councillor Knowles, that we as a committee will scrutinise very deeply and very hard whenever we can. And I'll be looking forward to all the officers to present every evidence they have to us so we can look at everything in fine detail. Councillor Reid, do you want to come back?
Yes, Chairman, if you allow me, I'll be quite blunt. The incompetence of officers during that time didn't help. The members and the cabinet member for housing, a succession of them, didn't get to the bottom or didn't want to get to the bottom of what some of the issues were. The situation, it has just been appalling. I asked the previous leader if I could take the cabinet position of housing. He gave me communities. This leader, when he took over, gave me a real basket with both planning and housing. Now I'm doing housing and property, and we are moving on. I understand, I really do understand the question of how did we get to where we are? But the thing is, what really matters is that we improve the situation and that we look after people as quickly as possible. And I just share the same disappointment, the same desperation for some people that really have not been looked after. Our repairs team, we have reason to believe one of the reasons our repair numbers at the moment is actually falling is because, really regretfully, some of our tenants are not even reporting the repairs, or they're doing them themselves. Now we have a whole culture shift, and the culture shift is led by the head of technical services in the new officer, excellent officer in Julie Martin. And indeed, we are working through prioritising those remedial works that are being done, the remedial works that we need to outsource to get more complicated jobs that are taking time done as well. Recruitment is one problem of officers, but I can assure you, outside of our duties, there is an external recruitment trawl actually happening to see what extra skilled labour we can get here. It's no excuse, but we also are trying to forward order and plan some materials and supplies, because we all know the building trade at the moment is particularly difficult for both supplies and the costs of them, but the costs come very secondary to a lot of the repairs that are absolutely essential to be done. And we are working, we're just working at them best we can.
Thank you, Councillor. All the scrutiny committee can do is scrutinise what's put before us. So I ask all members to, if they've got an issue or a concern, to raise it with me, or yourself raise it with a particular officer, and we will then dig deep into that particular issue to try and get on top of this. I know you've been working very hard, Councillor Reid, that I've seen that with Riverside in Grantham. But before you came into post, we had a case, and I'll be blunt, you've been blunt. I had a case where officers have kept members in the dark. Myself and Councillor Smith sitting back in the room were kept in the dark over Riverside, and that shouldn't be the case and will not be the case in the future. You want to come back, Councillor Reid?
Yes, one of the things that we put in place, and I'd like to share this with you, is you will remember that we managed to find a budget for a member services officer to deal with both inquiries and complaints. The position was put in place and the vacancy was filled. Unfortunately, some of the superiors above the officer's position didn't implement the way that they should have done, which is very sad. Subsequently, the particular appointee is now on long-term sick. However, what we have done is we have now been able to recruit from the temporary suspension of Market Deeping Leisure Centre some assistance from their personnel to help our head of technical services in looking after those appointments. I'm particularly keen that two things happen. One is that members can have a reliable member services registration for both inquiries and complaints, and that they know of that particular person and that they actually do the work. Now, when the officer has been at work, she has done it. The problem is it's not there at the moment and hasn't been for a while. So that's why we've now got temporary assistance coming in. The second thing is, and the second bit, there was two chances. One was that the member services officer for inquiries and complaint, it was a service for members, so they had a single point of contact. The other side of it is that our officers that are working away aren't being bombarded by all members who honestly are or were contacting whoever they knew in housing to actually say. So they were being constantly disturbed, disrupted, passing things around, filtering things and whatever. The whole idea was that all stopped, and that members were given a service that they were able to conduct on behalf of our residents. And indeed, they also were able to do some of the groundwork for our officers to be able to make for a better service. So can you tell me when they help actually will be on stream? Oh, apparently it's still the dates to be confirmed, the appointments being confirmed, but we are just to wait. It can't be very long because the leisure centres, at the moment is shut. So we are working.
That's good to hear, Councillor, because we've all got to remember officers and members serve the people. They're our priority, and we must remember that. Councillor Sarah Trotter.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Just in response to Councillor Knowles, I understand what you're saying about how did we miss it as a scrutiny committee. I think we've all had a bit of a wake-up call. I question that. I can't remember how many meetings ago, but I think when it was all raised about the housing and the problems. And I said, as a fairly new councillor, I was guilty of probably believing what I was being told. And I think I personally have learned, I should know that from my previous career, but don't believe everything that you're told. But I have got more confidence now. I had a family with a housing issue my first year as a councillor, and I must have had hundreds of emails trying to sort it out, and I was just passed around and they were passed around, and I couldn't believe that this was going on. Thankfully, through perseverance, obviously this family did get moved from a rural area into Grantham, and the problems are still there, but as a councillor, I can see that it's definitely improving. And when I ask a question, I seem to get answered a lot more swiftly now. Also, as you know, I'm chairman of the Employment Committee, and we've interviewed, final interview for both the Assistant Director of Housing and also Planning. And I hope that we've got the right person, but I feel confident that obviously I'm on this committee and I feel quite fortunate, so I can see who's coming in And then, going forward, I think we've all had a wake-up call. So, yeah, I appreciate what he's saying and take it from myself as Vice Chair and Ray. I think we're going to look forward and keep looking forward with confidence, I hope, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Amanda Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the spirit of openness and the hard work that's going on, and appreciate that you've got new people coming into your department. Actually, one of the questions that I was going to raise was about how we as members can take cases up, and I did realise that the officer who was responsible was off sick, and I'm very sorry to hear that, and I hope she has a speedy recovery. I'm just wondering if there's sense to set up an email address that perhaps isn't a person's name, so that if the role is not being fulfilled by one person, that there would be an email address where member concerns could go to. So say member housing at southcaststephen.gov.uk, because whenever I have concerns, I duly forward them to the address that I'm told to forward them to. And we don't always get replies, and I put my hand up to say that I am guilty sometimes of not always following up. And I just sort of think that it would be really great to trust in the system and know that when we've raised something, it is being dealt with. And so if there was a way of having one email address that was looked after by whoever happened to be doing the role that day, and maybe there was a way of logging and sending a reference number to us, that would be really helpful. And then a second thing that I just wanted to say was on the reports, on page 19, we've got a very nice graph. I like graphs because sometimes words get confusing, and it shows a great progress with all these things except electrical. And I'm just wondering why the numbers have gone down from June 2021, when it was 66.9% down to 48.68%. It feels like we're going in the wrong direction. I just wondered if there was a specific reason for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I come to Councillor Reid, just to go back to a comment that you made. I mean, I am concerned that we as members do not know who our officers are. We've got a sheet which constantly changes. And the way I get around it, if I'm searching for Carol, I'll go on to my iPad, look to see what her status is. If she's green, I'll call Carol up straight away, go face to face and get an answer from Carol. And Carol always gives me a good answer. So that's the way I get around it. We need to know who we're dealing with, where they are, where they're located, and whether they're on duty or not. But Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much, Amanda. On point 1, member services, I think it's a very good idea that we perhaps have a member services. Have we got a members? Right. Directors thinks that there is one. I'm going to see that that's reconfirmed, that we have a member services point of contact. And I'm going to ask that we send an email to all members of that. Now, more importantly, if that's done, I think the mechanism that Andrew uses, and I will ask him to confirm it, is that we have an officer, which is often Julie Martin, on call, on duty to actually deal with those. And is it rostered, Andrew? Can you answer that for me?
Perhaps if I come in, Chairman, through you, of course. Yes, I'm convinced. I've just been looking at my laptop. I can't find it, but I'm convinced that we have a general inbox for member inquiries, and a number of officers do have access to that. And in fact, the individual that Robert's mentioned, other officers, including myself, do have access to that individual's inbox. So we are able to look at inquiries coming in from councillors and cover it in that way. Happy to share that email address ASAP after the meeting for committee's benefit. So you look like you want to come back.
It was just to say that we were told not to use that one specifically for housing, and that for housing we were supposed to use the named officer. That's the instruction I was given. I that may be wrong, but that's what we were advised to. So I was just suggesting that we had an additional one that was specifically housing related. I presume it was asked to do that because there were just too many housing ones that you wanted to have a dedicated officer, I think.
The only thing I can say on to that one, Amanda, is that if you've got a specific email address for housing, that somebody's actually going to answer, it's not going to sit in an inbox for the whole week.
Yeah, absolutely. And the individual that's off that was dealing with member inquiries, a number of officers have got access to her inbox, and we are looking at it, including myself.
That's good to hear. I've got Councillor Hilary Westrop next.
We've only answered half of Amanda's question.
I do apologise.
I'm sorry to pick up on it.
That's
The
all right.
other one is exceedingly important to regards the electrical data. Okay. The electrical data, owing to the amount of contractors and the abilities that we have to actually conduct this and indeed do the action, is taking some time to get up to 100%. We have a mission. We have spoken about this mission. And at this point in time, we're going to stand by the mission, and that is that we will have electric up to 100% or very nearly 100% by the end of March. And I'll just ask Andrew to expand on that. But you're right to ask the question, and that's where we are.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. When you look at the graph, it's counterintuitive that we're doing testing, but the numbers have dropped. And the reason for that is that, so rewinding a little bit to the when the regulatory notice was served, it was clear at that point that the record keeping for electrical certification wasn't fit for purpose. So the interim AD at that point, I think, made the absolutely right call to say, rather than spend a huge amount of man hours looking at trying to sort the records out, let's accept what we've got in the system, but make a commitment to make sure all the stock is tested for the end of this financial year. So that's the reason for it falling off. It says as records that we of existing certificates expire, it looks like it's going down. But from this point onwards, I would anticipate that the figures continue to increase until we hit 100% March next year. And that is accepted by the regulator as an approach.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. Before we move on, I just want to say for the record, I'm very proud of our officers that we got now. And I know that you're all working very hard. I know Councillor Robert Reid is doing a really good job on housing. But we as a committee will hold you to account at every occasion. Councillor Westrop.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd quite like to just back up and corroborate what Sarah Trotter said, that I've had a little bit to do with the housing and the problems with various tenants. And I had to use a scattergun attack to try and find an answer to anything when it came to housing. And really in the last 6 months, 12 months, it's been a lot easier to actually communicate with people. So I'd like to thank everybody on the housing department for the work they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Jackie Smith.
Yes, thank you. I must admit that in the last few weeks, I've had quite a few people from trying to contact people through reception and not being able to get any response, or if they do, that they're getting, sorry, we don't know anything about that. If we're going to try to have a situation where the councillors know where to go to, and then we must keep it up to date on, I would say, almost a weekly session, that we get those things put right and that we ourselves know where to go. Because to the people that I've had to deal with, I've had to turn around and say, I'm awfully sorry, but at the moment we're just having a little bit of a problem, but as soon as I can find out, I'll get back to you. And it takes quite a long time to find out who, where, what, why and when.
I totally agree with you, Councillor Smith. I was looking at my chart the other day and I crossed gone. And if you remember years ago, we used to get regular updates on the changes for officers with their contact numbers. So I would recommend to Councillor Robert Reid to ensure that we do get up to date list of officers and their contact numbers as soon as they change. Councillor Reid.
There was a organisation chart done at the end of May that was circulated with respect, but you're quite right, that needs a revision again, and I will take that situation up with the Chief Executive the next time I clap eyes on her, because it is very, very important that we do know who is who, and we will have some updates to give for housing because we've got these appointments. So it'll be good to get those on from housing in particular on that point. Thank you. I would at some point, Chairman, beg the opportunity for probably 3 minutes to talk about voids when you permit. Thank you.
If I could come to you now on that, actually, Councillor Reid, because that's a very important topic that's been raised with this committee. So if you've got the time, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I do get asked questions as well at full council, but it's really important to me that I share and talk to the relevant committee, which is you good people, particularly where voids are concerned. Void management is and will remain a key area of the operational focus, and members will recall that changes have already been introduced to assist with turnaround times. But it's not as simple as that, as we need to make a few changes and we need to see re-let up times drop. And there are many issues that, in common with all landlords, are beyond our control in delays with utility supplies and waiting for occupational therapists' assistance to undertake adaptations to a property to make it safe and suitable for someone with specific housing needs. Work is continuing on the process, and the introduction of a new let standard, for example. I am aware that the technical services void team took time out last week to look at their processes and see what improvements can be made. I am assured that by the Director of Housing and Property, he also dropped into the meeting to follow through on the findings. It's also necessary for us we need to bring forward a voids policy, which we will be bringing to Cabinet. We have delayed it. We have delayed it because we need the substance and mechanism in place with the help of the new Assistant Director of Housing and indeed the Head of Housing Service. We're on the crest of them coming. The preliminary work is done. We want them to take ownership of it so that when we bring it in and we introduce it, it will actually happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. I'd be really interested to have an update and a later stage. I'm going to go to the recommendation now on page, if it's a quick one. And the reason I say it's quick is I understand there's an inspection of North Castilian Leisure Centre later on, so people need to get there. So go ahead.
Very, very quickly on voids, I seem to recall 18 months ago, very similar assurance. We were contrasting with North Castilian how bad we were, and exactly the same things were being said then. We're having a new system, new structures, everything else like that. We're absolutely getting it right. It'll be there, and we're back to the same thing. And that's because they keep on changing people at the top of the housing. We've got to get some stability into that, and so that those can stand by the promises they're making now, and not just make them again in 18 months' time.
You're quite correct, Councillor Knowles. Councillor Reid.
In one sentence, we have now got the stability. Give me another 4 weeks and we have got a cracking team, and it's going to be my job to support them, to help them, and to make sure they deliver in a kindly way and to make sure that we actually get there with this. And we are bringing the voids policy. We have empty homes. We have a huge housing waiting list. We need to do better. I'm sorry, really sorry, but there has been a transition process, a difficult one, from taking up the portfolio to where we are actually now with the personnel that we have now got constructed together. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor. I'm just going to give the last word now to Councillor Sarah Trotter before I move on.
It's for yourself, Councillor Reid and Andrew. When we're filling these houses, please can we make sure that they're appropriately housed? Because I do have problems, like I mentioned before. You have, an OAP in one half of a bungalow, and then you go and put someone who's probably got, not a problem drinking or drug problem, and then it causes more problems. I know everyone has to be housed, but can we really look at where they're housed, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Recommendations on page 13, sorry, my eyes are out of focus, is that one, that the committee notes the latest compliance position following the ongoing meetings with the regulator of social housing. Two, that the committee receives a further update report at its next scheduled meeting. Are we all agreed? Good, thank you very much, Steve. We'll move on now to item number 7. Again, another homes, interesting item, empty home strategy. Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Hopefully this particular item won't take quite so long. We do have a very clear commitment in our corporate plan to reduce the number of empty homes in the district. Although it is heartening to note that, as covered in the report in front of the committee today, the number of empty homes in the district is comparatively low, indeed falling. However, in my book, any homes that are empty is one too many. However, there is a consensus on the need for a clear strategic framework to provide clarity for members, officers, and of course the residents of the district in terms of our approach. A number of options and discussion points are targeted in the report and draft strategy put forward today, and I look forward to the debate of what we're proposing. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. My concern on empty homes is that we actually get the right tenants for the property. Obviously, every person is important, but they need to be made aware of the responsibilities they had before they move into one of our homes. My first speaker is, sorry, I'll get it in a minute, Councillor Mandra-Bleeder.
Thank you, Chairman. And can I just say thank you? It's great to see that we now have, a draft empty home strategy, and I really appreciate the work that's been done in this area. When housing is such a big need, and we're constantly having to have housing developments forced onto towns, it really does make sense to make sure that we're making the best use of houses. When houses that are lying empty should be filled with people. So thank you. I really welcome this. Just drawing attention for everyone on page 37, the number in the table there with 300% on the, I think that's the council tax premium, that's 24 homes that have been empty for 10 or more years. And it would be really great if we can get rid of that number so that we don't have any homes that have been empty for 10 or more years. That just seems like a really good ambition for us to have. I'm very glad that Robert's saying he thinks even one empty home is one too many. So I'd just like to say I very much welcome this, and thank you both for the work that you've done on this. This is excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Reid, do you want to come back on that?
Just simply to say, and this is a broad statement, but we are looking into a test case of an empty home that's been and the options of repossession and reusing it. That's something that this district council has never ever really done or made any way forward. We do have a test case, and it is in conjunction with a councillor that's just been talking, and we look forward in due course to following it through, and when we feel it is safe to expand on the details, we'll be pleased to share them with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions from members? No, right. I'm going down to page 33, recommendations. 1, that the committee notes and discusses the content of this report and a draft strategy. 2, provides comment and suggestions in relation to the strategic approach. 3, recommends further work in undertaking to submit an empty home strategy for cabinet consideration. And could I ask that if members do have any further thoughts, that they email Councillor Reid after the meeting. So I propose we accept those recommendations. Do I have a seconder? All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on then to Carol Drury on to the Equality Annual Report. Carol. And Carol, do you want to give us a COVID update at the same time?
Mr. Chairman, Ken Lyon is giving that update.
Oh, right. Okay. So over to you then, Carol.
Councillor, shall I do the? I've got a brief portfolio update for Annie, but if I do that under AOB, sorry for Councillor Mason, if I do that under AOB, is that okay?
That's fine.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm here today to present the Equality and Diversity Annual Position Statement for 2020-21. Committee is asked to review and comment on the position statement prior to the Cabinet Member for People and Safer Communities approving it for publication. The document is produced in accordance with our legal duties under the Equality Act 2010, and it provides SKDC specific information relating to our corporate plan and our values to show our corporate commitment to equality and diversity. It gives background on the Council's responsibility under the public sector equality duty and our equality objectives. And for the first time, we've included our action plan that relates to our equality objectives to show the current status. The objectives cover 2020 to 2024, and to date, we've delivered just shy of 40% of the action plan. We are required under our key performance indicators to have delivered 50% of the plan by March of 2022. These objectives also cover information relating to our gender pay gap. The action plan for which, although connected to our equality objectives, forms part of the work programme for Employment Committee. We go on in the document to provide a small insight into how we've continued to interact with our customers and support our communities, albeit in a slightly different way, given the restrictions we were all under because of COVID. And finally, the position statement then gives a profile of the district, demographics of our tenants, demographics of the wider community across South Kesteven, and our workforce statistics as we're required to do under law. Just a note on statistics, people that are keen to note the source of some of our statistics will see that in some instances we are still using data from the 2011 census. Obviously that kind of skews sometimes the position that we can see. The headline figures from the 2021 census won't be available to us till March or April next year. And the information that breaks down the demographics will probably be about another 2 years after that. So we work from Office for National Statistics mid-year estimates. But what we can see from the information that we've got through those mid-year estimates is that in general terms, our workforce is representative of the district we're here to serve. I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Steve. Before I open up to members, Carol, could you give us a flavour of roughly how many nations we have living in the district? I know, I remember some time ago you said it was over 40. Has that increased? And are there any particular nations that are not working well with other people?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got no information on any community tensions that are happening at the moment at all. We've had some, obviously, social media is a powerful thing, and there have been some negative comments out on social media because of certain communities that are currently resident in South Kesteven. In terms of changes in demographic, many of the Eastern Europeans from Poland particularly have either gone on to other places or returned to their country of birth. We still have a population of Polish people, but what we're noticing, and this is from community information, this is not any statistical information because I don't think we would ever get it from that, but from community information, there's an increasing number of people from places like Nigeria and India coming to live in our district.
The only thing I was worried about is that I know over the years you've invited myself and my wife to the Jubilee Centre for the annual event there. We've met some really friendly, interesting people. Is that still continuing? Are people still working in harmony together?
Obviously, for the time of restriction, places like Jubilee, for those who don't know, Jubilee Church Life Centre in Grantham provides English as second language free to people every week. Obviously, they've not been able to do that for a lot of 2020, but that has started again now. And they do intend to hold their Celebrate the Nations party this year, which is great that they can do it again. And particularly for Grantham, one of the greatest sources of information around tensions or lack of integration comes through that source, and I'm not hearing anything negative at this moment.
That's good. You mentioned the annual event that you've invited myself to this year. Is there a possibility of inviting my colleagues on this committee to that event?
What I can do, Mr. Chairman, is ask the Jubilee if that's okay, and if it is, I'm certainly will be, and then I can forward the invitation to everyone on this committee.
Thank you very much. I'll go up now to members of the committee. Any questions? Councillor Mandoida.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not so much a question, more as an observation and a thank you. I'm really glad that we have someone like Carol working on this. I feel that she's doing a fantastic job. And many of you will know that there was a diversity festival taking place in Stamford on Bank Holiday Monday. It was supported by SKDC to the tune of 5,000 community grant. And I was so pleased to see Carol and other officers there. It was, in all my many years of living in Stamford, the proudest I've ever been of the community. The atmosphere at the event, which was attended by thousands of people, was just extraordinary. And I would very much love to join you at the Jubilee Church. I think any activities that involve people from across our community coming together and getting on with each other are all to be supported, and it would be great as councillors to go to more of these events. I would also like to say that in view of equality as well, I know that Stamford are hoping to hold a Pride event next year, and whether that comes before the community fund as well, we would very much love to continue with our work in Stamford on equality and diversity. So thank you very much, Carol. I really appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mandoida. I mean, Carol's done a fantastic job over the years. I really appreciate all the work that you've done, Carol. If members could look at page 59, you will see the Jubilee Church, the photograph that was taken there a couple of years ago. Each nation brings along different food to cook or to eat, and we have a great time in England. Councillor Philip Knowles.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly. Over the years, I've read lots and lots of policy documents and plan documents, and this is one of the better ones that I've come across. And it seems very comprehensive and well put together. and I congratulate the people who did it, Carol and the people who did it, and wish them well in their progressing it, making it happen, as well as writing it.
As I said, Carol does a great job, really great job. Councillor Sarah Trotter.
That's a question.
It was packed on both days and all sorts of activities and all sorts of nationalities. And it was very good to see that. And I was disappointed that it didn't seem to have much publicity, but nevertheless, it was attracting an awful lot of people. And given the weather on the Saturday, it was nice to see so many people actually going out and just ignoring and having some very good fun with people that they hadn't seen or knew before. And it really broke the ground with a lot of people. So it doesn't take a lot of money to get some of these things going. It just needs people to do it. And I must admit, Father Stewart was really enjoying himself as well.
Father Stewart does a great job.
Yes, he does.
Carol, could I ask you one further question? You mentioned the chat cafe. Did we get any money from government to progress that any further?
We didn't, Mr. Chairman, but fortunately the Jubilee got some funding through the National Lottery, and they hold a chat cafe 3 days a week now, one of which focuses particularly on mental health, and the other two are one was created for people to practice English outside of their lessons, but it's used by everybody, so it doesn't matter the background, anybody can go in. And when I must stress that although we keep calling it Jubilee Church Life Centre, and it is a Christian church, but their community work is open to all sections of the community.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Carol. Any further questions from members? If not, I'll refer you to page 55, the recommendation. The recommendation is, it is recommended that members of the Rural and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee review and comment on the appended Equality and Diversity Annual Position Statement 2021 and note its content prior to the approval for publication. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Thank you. We'll then move on to item 9, Disabled Facilities Grant, which is for noting only. That's on page 85. I must remember to bring my glasses next time. Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for allowing me to speak on this particular item. I've got some facts that I would like to share with you. They are particularly more important for me to share with you because of the disparaging remarks that were made at the last FREDCO meeting that the disabled facility grants underspend was due to the fact we were looking in the wrong places. To correct the statement, we had COVID situations that went through the year of 2021. You will also remember, Chairman, that an additional funding was given to us during that year of, I can't remember the exact amount, 119,000, I think, was our share of the extra funding. We simply weren't able to spend it during that particular year, albeit it's being carried forward because we just weren't able to carry out. However, what is good to share with all of you is the update of where we are at the outturn of the first 6 months. The first quarter, we had 31 occupational therapy recommendations received, and we had 5 that didn't progress, but the rest have done. 23 in the second quarter recommendations, and only 1 that's not progressing to date at the end of quarter 2. We've managed to issue 56 grants approved since the beginning of April this year. 46 adaptations completed since the 1st of April. Some properties have more than 1 adaptation, as you would appreciate. They include a variety of assistances, 7 stair lifts, 26 level access showers, 5 ramps, 2 ground floor toilet and bathroom alterations into wet rooms, 2 wash dry toilets, 1 through floor lift, and 6 others. The current expenditure and commitments and accruals to date in the first 6 months is £678,000 against the budget of 975,000. So you can clearly see, Chairman, and I'm sure everybody else can, that the money that we have to be able to help people with coming out of hospital and adaptations and whatever, we are well on target this time. It's not to say that we're not experiencing continued delays for materials for some adaptations and contractor availability. We've got 20 that are in the framework at the moment. And this varies on the amount of adaptation. But of course, we have a few of those adaptations that have decided to delay, they've chosen to delay works owing to still COVID potentialities. Thank you very much for allowing me to share that. I hope it's duly noted.
Yeah,
And
thank
I
you.
hope if Fredco raises it again, they might look upon it with the light in which we are managing to perform. Thank you.
I'm very proud of this council because as a former member of SAFA, Soldier Sailors Air Force Families Association, we utilised the funds from not only this council, other areas to assist people with life-changing facilities. And I stress that, life-changing facilities, because otherwise people either won't be able to get into their houses, couldn't get into their bedrooms. And those grants we've got from here have made their lives so different. Could I ask you a question? Is there a limit for contribution? It used to be £10,000. Has that changed or has it gone back down?
I will seek clarification in a minute from Anne-Marie, but as far as I understand, there isn't a limit for adaptations.
Anne-Marie?
Yes, so if it's a mandatory disabled facilities grant, the maximum grant someone is entitled to is £30,000.
And are we getting more requests from hospitals now for adaptations from patients being discharged?
We've had some, but the vast majority come from the community occupational therapists, so people that are already in their home. But part of our discretionary policy does allow for an expedited grant to help people out of hospital as quickly as possible.
So the owner occupier or one of our tenants, is there a request to pay from either owner occupier or tenanted?
Sorry, I don't understand the request to pay.
If somebody lives in their own home, are they more likely to have to contribute than somebody who lives in one of our council properties?
So the disabled facilities grants don't apply to our HRA properties, but there is a aligned scheme that runs along the same. The contribution isn't based on your tenure, it's based on your income and your savings. Although in some instances we don't means test. Again, that was a decision that was made by members, one of those being stair lifts, that there is no means test applied at all.
Thank you. Councillor Amanda Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just got a question about the disabled grants. Are these only applicable to physical disabilities, or are they also applicable to people with mental health issues as well?
Both, Councillor Wheeler. If it meets the definition of a disability, then the occupational therapist will make an assessment and, depending on what's appropriate, make a recommendation to the council.
I remember being with SAFA, we've had bathrooms changed into shower rooms, we had bed adaptations, steps being changed, various things, all, as I say, life-changing. Councillor Reid, you want to come in?
Thank you. I just wanted to remind members, and it has been touched on, that the money we're talking about here is on private properties, and that council stock also has adaptations, but they are dealt with and met by the HRA. So we have two mechanisms here in actual ways that adaptations are made. One for private, which is grant funded, which comes here, and it directly comes down from the county council. And indeed, the second way is for our own housing stock. One of the things I have done with the disabled facility grants at county and with the other 6 districts is make sure that the monies that are available for the whole of the county are levelled up where there has been underspends. We now are in a position, as you can clearly see, that we won't have any levelling up to do, because in the first 6 months we're well prescribed and we're going to have looked after our district's situations. In fact, I think will be fully utilised before we even get to January, I would imagine, because there's this number of adaptations that is the 20 that are still in process at the moment. So we're making good provision and use of the money that's available by the grant.
Thank you. Councillor Philip Knowles.
It's just a question of clarification. You partly answered the question just then, but I'll just try and get. You said we're spending 690,000 so far out of a budget of 900,000. Is that the annual budget? The next question is, can we increase that amount of money if and when, at the rate we're going, we run out of that particular fund? Is it increasable?
I'll ask Anne-Marie to actually assist with the answer, but as I understand it, it's a grant that's our allocation from county. I think we can go back to county to see if there's any more monies from the whole county as a whole.
Councillor, sorry, Anne-Marie, you wanted to say, come back?
Thank you. Yes, that's an allocation from government. So that's our annual allocation. We have found in the past few years that in January, the government has often issued an additional top up to councils, but we do have some underspend from previous years that we can draw on if we need to.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. I refer you then to page 85. In just notes the outcome of the delivery of the Council's Disabled Facility Grant Programme during 2021. Now, before we go on to the work programme, I'm going to call Ken Lyon to do us a COVID update. Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to say, I'm going to do a whole portfolio update, but very briefly, some key highlights rather than just a COVID update, if that's with your permission, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Great, thank you very much. So I'll start off with COVID, and just to say Anne-Marie Coulthard is in the room with us, as you know, and she will be able to answer much better than me any detailed questions around the latest state of play. But in terms of the current position as of Tuesday, the 5th of October, the COVID positivity rate in South Kesteven was 463 per 100,000, with the vast majority in school-aged children. And this is reflected across Lincolnshire, with all districts seeing increases. The current Lincolnshire average for context is 402 per 100,000, and the England average is 337 per 100,000, and in East Midlands it's 440. So you can see that South Kesteven's above all of those. In terms of vaccinations, booster vaccinations have started in Lincolnshire. Those in cohorts 1 to 9 will be offered the booster. So those aged 50 or above, clinically vulnerable and healthcare workers, and those eligible will be contacted to make an appointment. So that's vaccinations. As you know, the government have started to develop potential certification regime around the emerging Plan B. I won't go into the detail of that, but Anne-Marie will be able to answer any detailed questions of that later on if people have got specific questions. But obviously that may well be enacted if it looks like the NHS is going to come under unsustainable pressure. Other updates to have from the portfolio. So probably important, I was going to really praise Carol for her safeguarding report to governance and audit, but she doesn't like too much praise, and she's had some already today. But safeguarding report was approved very supportively by governance and audit this last week. Key thing is actually, and again thanks to Carol's work, is that we achieved a green rating in the Section 11 children's services children's audit through the Children's Act of 2004. And not only did we get a green rating, we were also used as the best practice for other councils. So I think that's worth noting. And more broadly than that, we've got we've developed a much more robust approach with the safeguarding team. So we're not just relying on Carol. We've also got an officer in Anne-Marie's team, Katie Conway, and an officer in Andrew's team, Beth Randall, who is part of that, working with Carol and myself on that, which is great. Won't talk about equalities because Carol's covered that. In terms of wider community stuff, you'll have noted in SK today that the finalists for the SK Community Awards have been announced. So if you haven't seen those, I'd encourage you to look at them, covering the categories. So we had a great response to that, well over 100 nominations for those awards. And the winners will be announced in the next edition and via the media platform. So please do look out for that, but some reflective of some great work across the community. And just to continue, just an update on the mental health challenge. As members will remember, it was unanimously adopted at full council in July and passionately supported by a number of members. And the work has continued really well since then. And I just want to say thank you particularly to the Mental Health Working Party, which include councillors Mason, Wheeler, Dilks and Baxter, alongside Councillor Trotter, who's just stepped off the party, but thank you for your input in that. Councillor Trotter's been replaced by two people, in Councillor Penny Robbins and Councillor Helen Crawford. But we've been able to see some real progress in terms of the community work on that. Particularly I highlight some of the work that's happening in Stamford through Mindspace, where we were lucky to visit yesterday and had a brilliant time. Who have developed a wellbeing map and a community connections piece, which is some great practice work. So if you're in those areas, I'd encourage you to connect with those and connect with them. And tomorrow we are starting off, or the community in Deepings, in fact, not we are starting off Deepings Community Forum at 12:30 in the Sports and Social Club to explore mental health support in the Deepings, which is really good, and how that can take place in the community environment. There's all sorts of other things taking place, but which we'll do a full update on next time. But also to thank staff and councillors who have signed up for mental health first aid training. So there's 22 staff that are currently received that training from Don't Lose Hope, with 4 more in the offing. And they will be joined, which is particularly relevant to members, by 6 councillors, because we're really very conscious of supporting councillors' mental health as well. And they will represent all the political groups across the council. So we've made sure those are representative. So there's a kind of brief whistle stop through Councillor Mason's portfolio, but happy to take questions on anything else.
Thank you, Ken. There's 2 questions I'd like to ask. You mentioned about the schools. I'm sure other members have seen children crowding around together outside schools. Is this doing any liaison with County Council regarding that problem?
Certainly, yes, we've got close contacts with Derek Ward and his team, the Director of Public Health, to try and do all that we can to encourage children to maintain the social distance that has been in place. You should appreciate legislation has changed, and mask wearing at schools has now been removed as part of that, but the liaison does continue.
Thank you very much indeed. And the other question I was going to ask, it's just gone out of my head, but I'll just try and think about it now. No, it's gone, so I go to Councillor Trotter.
Anne-Marie, I don't know if I heard right. Did Ken say Lincolnshire is a higher average to the UK? Are you able to comment on that at all?
sorry, that he has given around that, in that throughout COVID, we've really seen that Lincolnshire has been several weeks lagging behind the rest of the country, and that has seemingly followed as well. So where they've gone up, we've been slightly down. As they've gone down, we've then gone up on the curve. So it seems to continue that we do seem to have that general lag across some of the rest of the country, particularly the south.
I just remember what it was, Carol. Safeguarding. You have a request to members to complete the safeguarding programme. I understand only 8 members have done it. I've not done it, so I'm as guilty as everybody else. So can you please do the safeguarding programme? I think there's 4 modules, is there altogether, Carol?
I think there's 5. There are two to have completed within the first year of office, and the rest is across your term. So it's not an onerous task. It's all e-learning, and the modules will take you between 20 and 45 minutes to complete. But so there'll be an introduction to safeguarding. Everyone in Lincolnshire is the one that we really need everybody to do. And then the others are listed out in the email that will have been sent by member services. I think Sam Selby sent out another reminder to members just to ask them to do that.
I understand you need to see the certificate that you get back.
I do, if you don't mind, please, because then I'll stop chasing you see.
Right, thank you. I'm going to move on to item 10, the work programme. For noting only, but are there any comments from members? Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple. I know the voids has been mentioned already today, but is there a specific date that we'll be discussing it on the work programme? Because I think it's on there, but it just says date to be confirmed or something. It would be quite good to get that as early as possible. And then the other thing was, does council house building come under this committee? And if it does, where does that fit on our work programme? So 2 questions.
I don't know, but I know it does. Ken.
Yes, it does come under the remit of this committee. And so if the committee would like that to go on the work programme with the agreement of the cabinet member, we can put a report through on that. And I'm sure the cabinet member looks like he might have an answer to any question you might have as we speak.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much for your entertainment, officer. Right, number 1 is voids. Very seriously, we're coming back to you on December the 9th. Okay, so we'll be right up to speed with it there. And as I said, it is awaited, but we've got to have it absolutely with onus and to be right on that. Secondly, house building. We very happy to take questions on it. Can I please ask that for asking of future development, you appreciate and understand we need to balance that with the stock condition report. And I'm not saying to you or anybody that we're not going to build any new houses, because we know we do lose so many by right to buy as well. And so there's a replacement scenario ongoing there. We also need to look at one of the housing new builds that is going to happen. Probably the next one that we actually do will be Swinegate, but we are looking to be able to use that with a equilibrium change, that we have 30 sheltered housing schemes of sorts. We don't have housing schemes for specialist housing needs, which would be much better if we actually did. So we've got, in essence, we've got 30 different housing combinations where they used to be until 2014 wardens, which they no longer are. And so really they live in sheltered schemes where they've got a community room, but not a lot else. And we're looking to make the first one of Swinegate actually fit for purpose for our sheltered scheme. And then we can use wherever those people have come out of those existing schemes into the new scheme. That will give us homes by displacement. So it's not a matter of we're not going to provide them, but we're looking, and that's going to be a real long-term project. But we really do seriously need to start and look at having, if we can, one day, hopefully in my lifetime, we will have about eight or maximum of 10 sheltered schemes that are literally proper sheltered schemes rather than what we have as adaptions at the moment.
Without going into a debate, I mean, in Grantham, we have Greyfriars and also Manor Street, where they were shelter schemes and the wardens were taken away. And so I welcome any return to that sort of support that we have in this district. Any further comments, anybody? Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, I appreciate your department's very busy. I just was raising it as, could we put it on the work plan, just so that at some point in the future it's there? That would be really great. Thank you. And sorry, I just had another one. I'm being greedy, but the breathing space policy that we looked at in July, I think we agreed that we would be looking at it again in 6 months, because that would have given the first people with that. I think the time period was 6 months. So because it just says items to be allocated a date for consideration. So that would be good if we could look at that within immediately after the 6 months is up.
Anybody else? I've got one for you for Councillor Annie Mason. Crime and disorder. We haven't had our crime and disorder meeting recently, and we need one. So we make sure you have a look at that and see if we can get Chief Inspector Phil Vickers to attend a meeting in future. Thank you. Councillor Reid. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I'd like to put a date to the requisition for housing. Our stock condition report, which we've spoken about today, we will have done our budgets. And so therefore, I'd like to recommend to the request for an update on new house build for your meeting that's coming up on the 17th of February. We think we'll be in a position at that point to do it properly.
Great, thank you very much indeed then. I'm going to move on to item 11, any other business. Now, I put this on there. I sent all members a link because the Lincolnshire Acute Service Review is out now until December. Every household in the county will be getting a notification regarding changes to services. And I've got a list here: orthopaedic services across Lincolnshire, urgent emergency care at Grantham, acute medical beds at Grantham, and stroke services across Lincolnshire. There is a link which I've sent you to go into. There is also a consultation meeting in Grantham on the 14th of October, which is next week at the Jubilee Centre. It's 6:30. I understand there's one in Boston as well, but if you all go into that link, it's very important to all your residents to make sure they have a voice. And that's it. Thank you very much indeed. Now at 3.
Just on that, I'm away next week, so I would not be able to attend.
Right, thank you. I'm now going to close the meeting. So thank you very much indeed for your patience and being quick today. It's now 3:40 and I therefore declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much indeed.